share. So we are gathered together, second time this year, or is it the first? I think it's the first. Is it the second?
Second, if you want to count last night.
That's true. So we are here together. We are missing Minu. She's hanging out in Denver. She's got some errands she's got to run today. But we have had this topic on our minds for a while. And we thought since we're together today that we would talk about fear. And I'm not talking about the fear like from watching a scary movie. I'm talking about the quiet kind of fear, the fear that sneaks in and says, I don't think that's a good idea. Or the fear that says, why do you think you can do that? Or the fear that says, you're not good enough. You don't have that skill set. Why would you do that? You know, those quiet kind of fears that pop up and interrupt our lives, interrupt the path that we're trying to walk. Those scary, quiet types of fears. So that's been on my mind because those fears, you know, they stop us from moving forward. So that's what I want to talk about today. Does anybody have a thought?
Well, when you had mentioned this topic, I kind of had to dive deep because she had said, this is what we should talk about. We talked about it and to really think about what you wanted to discuss. And I have to admit that I am still struggling with what I want to discuss. I think I have a couple of fears or one fear is navigating life without my parents. I lost my mom a couple years ago, and I call my bonus mom and my dad, especially my dad. I feel like I talk to him almost on a daily basis. And who's going to be the person that I call for advice? Who's going to be the person who says, maybe you shouldn't do that? Who's going to be my wisdom check-in? You know, the way I kind of look at things is, you know, my dad is on the 75th floor and I'm on the 47th, and he can see so much more on the 75th floor than I can see on the 47th. And, you know, my granddaughter's on the 6th floor, so obviously her view of the world is not as big as it is on the fifth floor. And the wisdom that he has to offer me, and just the fact that he's there, like he's always been there, you know, part of my life. I think losing and not losing my parents and not having my parents around is a great fear of mine because I think I'm going to feel very alone. So there's that one. And I'll let you girls talk. I have a couple of other ones, but that's a big one for me.
Well, you said it very beautifully, Shannon. For me, I feel fear lives in me. It's quiet, it's persistent, and it's deeply engraved in who I am. I feel that there's a little voice inside me who's my biggest critique. And I've actually named her fear because she has nothing nice to say. Every situation that comes is what worse can happen, what can go wrong. And in my mind, how I perceive fear is the biggest fear, like you mentioned, is definitely, of losing your near and dear ones. But more than that is the fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, failure, fear of being judged constantly. That's the big one that I lived with. And fear of uncertainty. What is next that is coming? Though I truly believe, just as change, fear is something constant, but it's so hard, it's so deep rooted. I mean, I can talk about myself. It's based on my past trauma, my conditioning, that it's hard to control. What would you say, Savvy?
Well, first off, you sound hypervigilant like me. I stay in a hypervigilant state. What's the worst can happen has always been a fear of mine. And that's with everything, because even in talking about this particular fear, it sounded like the fear that we were headed in talking about was more about where do we go in life, things that stop us from being more than who we could be, just that kind of fear. But it sounds like this type of fear that we're talking about is much more deep rooted, that causes us to pause and stop within ourselves. And a lot of that comes from the childhood trauma or what you've had to endure where, silenced as a child, then you're afraid to speak up. If you are told that you're not going to be enough, or you're never going to amount to anything, then you feel like you're stopped and you can't make that big move to the next step. So I'm just sitting back and listening to everyone's thought process and where they're going to talk about fear. But I do stay in a hypervigilant state myself. And that's where my fear stems from. Not so much that I can't do it, because I can do all things. That's something that I know spiritually for myself. but there's a dooms feeling of, if I move forward, what's the worst that can happen, and I do stay in that state.
I think that also holds true for joy. I think sometimes we have a fear of being happy, of being joyful, because it's just like you said, that hypervigilant state where you think like life can't be this good. Like, when's the shoe going to drop? When is that traumatic event going to happen? So I think we have sometimes can have this fear of holding ourselves back from experiencing how good life can really be, because we're always like, when's it coming? Where's it going to come from? That constant vigilance, like you said, looking over the shoulder, like just not allowing, not even realizing that life is meant to be good. Not to say that things aren't going to happen, because of course they will. And maybe that's the mentality we have to face life with is, yeah, life is really great. And yeah, something bad is going to happen. It is. Someone's going to lose a job. Someone's going to get sick. Something will happen. Erin, no?
So, no, I'm ready. Yeah. Yeah. I think for myself, I've operated out of fear a lot in my life. When you talk about the sitting in joy and being worried and about the other shoe drop, there's a band that I love called Sat Song. They have a song called Storm Chaser, and he talks about how when everything is going great, he's a storm chaser, kind of look for something to stir it up, and because that's what he's accustomed to, of the kind of chaos and storms that he's weathered in his life. And so when things are calm, doesn't really know what to do without the storm. So I think I've experienced that for sure, like self-sabotage when things are going really well and I'm chasing my dreams and living in it and experiencing it. That little voice, like you talked about, will come in and, are you really capable of this? Do you have the credentials for this? Who says that you can do that? And all those little negative voices. I'm again reminded of my mom, her funny sayings. And this one is acronyms, and it's fear. So fear, the first definition is F everything and run. So if you've got a bear chasing after you, yes, fear serves its purpose. We need to have that response in certain situations. So it's not necessarily that your gut is wrong. When you feel fearful, sometimes that your intuition is telling you, hey, pay attention, you need to stay safe. But in other situations where you're digging deep and trying to live in the way that you want to, chasing your dreams, and you get fearful of things that maybe don't even exist, that's where the other acronym comes in. And it's so FEAR, the acronym. So future expectations of an altered reality, which is not even in existence yet. It's just our thought about what might happen. What could happen? What's the very worst thing that could happen? And so I've been trying to flip my perspective on this, because I've definitely been paralyzed in fear a lot over the last year, and in certain aspects. It's been preventing me from moving forward with certain things that I'm wanting and desire in my life. And so I think what I've been thinking about is, what is my truest desire? Like, what do I really want? And focusing on that. Like, what is my purest desire? I've been thinking a lot about what you talked about, Paula, about how do I want to feel with what I really want? Not the thing that I want, but how is it that I want to feel in my life with those things that I think I desire, and kind of thinking about that a little bit more and drilling down. But I think when I get in that fear space of worrying about what might happen in that altered reality, it prevents me from being in the present. Either I'm worried about what's going to happen down the road, which may or may not even happen, or something that may have happened behind me that isn't even in existence anymore, except in my memory or my trauma experiences. Releasing that and thinking about, what is it that I really want. That's kind of where my headspace has been.
Very well said, Erin. I know we're kind of all experiencing some issues here, so hopefully I'm still able to record.
All right. So it's been kind of a challenging recording day. Fear of lack of bandwidth. So, Erin, I don't know if we captured everything that you were sharing, which was so on point and meaningful. So hopefully we caught all of that. But I think, I was wondering, when you guys feel fear, like, how does that come up for you? Like, do you feel it physically? Do you feel it emotionally? Like, does it stop your body? Does it stop your mind? For me, it's mind. For me, it's always And we were talking last night, and Carolina was like, Paul, I don't know what you're afraid of. I have a fear of bears. I don't want to get attacked by a bear and ripped open from top to bottom. But the things that stop me in my tracks are my own thoughts, my own messed up thinking, my own fears of, and I think, Erin, you talked about it earlier. My thought patterns come up and stop me. My fear of failure, my fear of success, my fear of being judged. I think, Sabi, you brought that one up, or Minu. My fear, nowadays you hear a lot about imposter syndrome. But just for me, it comes up as, who do you think you are? And the other thing that comes up for me is that I can disguise my fears as practicality. Like, of course, I'm not going to quit my job. Why would I give up the security of a paycheck, the security of a 401k, the security of blah, 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 to take a leap of faith? So I can be, my fears can, talk to me and say, not right now. They stop me because I put the cloak of practicality on them. Who else?
You said it very well, Paula. I feel internal fear, doesn't mean that you're weak. What it means is something inside you is broken. Something inside you have learned to survive. Like for me, fear hit me emotionally and physically both. It hit me in my gut, in my stomach, or sometimes I feel that I'm breathless. And based on what kind of fear I'm enduring, where is it coming from? I usually take a step back and I always put my one hand on my heart and one on my stomach and, start rubbing myself. And then I always say, I am a storm in a skin. I'm a storm in a skin. This too shall pass. Nothing is permanent. And I swear these words constantly, my affirmations just help me calm myself down. Fear comes from multiple platforms, it could be your early life experience, childhood trauma, any unhealed emotional baggage that you carry, or conditions, the belief system that you were raised in, which constantly creates fear. And how it shows up is overthinking, constant overthinking.
And that's where I'm going to jump in.
Yes.
If you're done with your thought.
Yes, go ahead.
So I have very natural fears. We were born with natural fears, 5 natural fears, I believe. My biggest one is the fear of the dark. I'm still very, very afraid of the dark. I sleep with a nightlight. I was even telling the girls last night, we watched a movie and it wasn't even that scary, but it was about reaction. How would you react in that situation? What would you do? Is what I couldn't get out of my head. And so I turned my phone on, had the nightlight, and then was finally able to fall back asleep. But honestly, I would have to say that I have my natural fear of the dark. And I also have always been very afraid of height. And, you always hear people talk about facing your fears, overcoming your fears. And so I did. I was kind of forced into it. And we were on a family vacation. We went to the Royal Gorge and we all walked across that huge bridge, which after we crossed it, a few years later, I think it was in 2012, there was that huge fire. Do you guys remember in the Royal Gorge? And it collapsed. And yeah, that bridge collapsed and they've rebuilt it now. But even so, when I think about fear, I think of like, what is my reaction to whatever that fear could be? And I learned from crossing that bridge that I definitely have a fight response because I'm sorry, not a fight response, a flight response, not fight. I don't know that I could do a 1-2 like Savvy talks about, but I definitely know, I definitely know that I can run. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she was little at the time and I had her in one of those little harnesses that you bring your baby to your chest and you kind of wrap her around. And I remember holding her little baby hands and just walking as fast as I could across that bridge and just thinking, I'm overcoming this fear. I'm overcoming this fear. I'm going to get across this bridge. And I could remember like feeling my heart pound like into her little body. Like I could feel my heart through her body because I was just going so quickly and I just wanted to get across the bridge. And my other little one was like, Mommy, where are you going? And I remember getting to the other side and just having like a full-on panic attack. I went into the bathroom and it was just like splashing water on my face and like trying to feel proud of myself for overcoming that fear. But are you really overcoming if you're just running from it? So I'm still afraid of heights.
But did you have to go back across the bridge?
No, they have a bus. They have a bus that you go back down to the parking lot. And so I did not. And that was my first thought. I was like, do we have to go back? Do I have to go back again? I really don't want to go back again. I don't think I could do that again, like fully panicking. And luckily there was a bus that we could take back down. So yeah, it is interesting how fear can be like a natural fear and you just get through it. And for me, I have to say that I don't really know what I'm afraid of other than speaking my fears and like talking about them and telling you what they are or what they might be, because I feel like they could actualize if I speak of them. And so I don't know. I mean, some psychologists might say, wow, Carolina, you really suppress your feelings. I might say, well, mostly few, honestly, because I just feel like I don't really know what my fear is until I'm facing it. And I don't really know what my reaction will be until I'm facing it. But what I hope is that I will be guided and protected by God. Because maybe that is my fear, is that I will not reach for him or seek him or surrender to him in a time of fear. I consider myself a very religious person. And I guess that is my fear now that I'm thinking about it, is to not rely on my creator, to not fully trust and follow him in a moment of need. Because I'm definitely not a person that's afraid of the future. In 2020, I wasn't afraid of getting sick. And, my mom being ill, I'm not afraid of losing her. I want to make sure that I handle it properly. I want to ensure that I guide and protect my children, my husband, when his parents go or when my parents go, that we handle things in a not necessarily fearless way, but with fear of the Lord, knowing that we're guided and protected in him always. So that's what I have to say about that.
Miss Savvy.
Well, first off, you would have fooled me that you're afraid of heights, because I don't know if you remember, we went to Pagosa Springs and I told you guys I was getting ready to play my trash music and Oceans came on by Hillsong.
When we were driving.
And I too have a fear of heights, and I didn't know what we were getting ready to encounter. So that drive, I would have lost it if I was the one behind the wheel. You held yourself together. I fell apart in the back seat, hoping the Lord would fulfill his will in me as we were listening to that song.
And we started singing, remember?
Yeah.
I think Aaron even has video of that, because it is scary, but I think that because I was behind the wheel, it was like, okay, like, take the wheel, Lord. Here we go. Right. And then that song just happened to come on, and you and I were both singing, and we got through it.
That was some serious trust. And I think literally not just to trust that the Lord was going to get us through that, but he was guiding your hands. Because I swear, I thought that semi that I saw in front of us, I was like, what in the world? What's happening right now? But I think that shows that you put your hands in the Creator. You believe in him and trust in him to get you through those times. That shows that right there. Because I'm be honest, like I said, it took the song for me to come out of myself, and I had to really cry and trust him through that mountain. That mountain was really scary for me. And if I hadn't have heard those words playing in the background instead of my trash music, we probably would have went off the edge. But I do believe that, in your character, it shows that you do put your trust in the Lord in everything that you do and everywhere you walk. And so I wouldn't fear that, because you lean on him in the scariest of moments, and you demonstrated that very much so. And it helped me get over that pass that we had to go through. So I just wanted to say that.
That was beautiful. And that's friendship. Scoopalicious, did you want to share something?
You ladies have been talking about God, your higher power, the Lord, and Savvy and I have talked about this. I am afraid of the great deception. Am I going to know that I'm being deceived, or am I going to have discernment? Lost me. We talk about like the rapture. I fear for those, for my children who are not walking with the Lord yet. Now, I'm not going to say that they're not walking. My children believe in God and they pray and stuff. I guess it's everybody's own journey, but I do worry about that. Like, are the people that I love, are they going to have the strength and the discernment to know this is not the way and that is a great fear of mine too, because I do feel like times are coming to an end here very quickly. And if we're not going to see it, I definitely feel my grandchildren will. Okay. I'm not sure how much of that you picked up, but I do have a great fear that I'm not going to have discernment to know if I'm being deceived when the rapture comes. So that is a fear of mine.
Okay. So obviously fear is not something we can shy away from. It's going to come up. We're going to always have fearful events, whether it's the fear of heights, walking across that super high bridge, or maybe getting on a roller coaster, or maybe we want to go camping. But I'm not going to go if there's bears.
I don't like bears either. There's always bears.
Or maybe it's the fear of taking, the next brave step in your career or in, your relationship, or, having a hard conversation with a loved one, with a friend. Sometimes avoiding things is way easier than confronting fearful things. But what's the cost if fear is leading you? What opportunities are lost if we don't take that next brave step? Is it costing you a friendship? Is it costing you a relationship? Is it costing you an opportunity to expand your life? So I haven't seen this movie, but this concept came up. Did anybody see We Bought a Zoo?
That's
Do
a
you love
great
that
movie.
I've never seen it.
It's a good movie.
But, I try to do a little bit of prep work before we sit down and have these conversations. And this idea of 20 seconds of courage came up, and apparently it's in that movie. Is somebody, Lena, you're shaking your head. Can you talk about that?
So he talks about having 20 seconds of courage after like feeling the fear. So like recognize and acknowledge the fear. But it's like, I think this is actually a sales book. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. But that talks about feeling the fear, surrendering to the fear, acknowledging the fear, and then doing it anyway. And all it takes is 20 seconds of courage. And I think he's talking to his son about going and talking to a girl. It's like, it just takes 20 seconds. Just do it. Just take that courage, go over, say hello, and just see where it goes from there. And so that's where it comes up about a girl.
It's a true story too. The main character in the movie, he actually bought this like defunct zoo that was an animal rescue, and his wife had passed away, and he and his two little kids, or I guess they were, I don't know, like middle school, high school age, and bought this zoo. And what a wild ride, and all the expense of it, and just a really crazy experience. But he did that. But what was underneath all of that was having the courage to love again, being fearful to open his heart again. And it's a really good movie. Watch it. Yeah.
So I think the takeaway point from this whole idea of the 20 seconds of courage is that we can't hide from the fear. We can't stop it. We have to learn to move with it, to live with it, to be able to move forward in spite of the fear. And I loved that idea of the 20 seconds of courage, because I'm sure we've all, obviously Carolina gave us a good example, but we've all had those fearful episodes. And if we have that courage to just move forward, to just take that next brave step, it's amazing what's on the other side. I mean, once I know we've all done scary things. And once you're on the other side, you're like, wow, that wasn't really that bad. That wasn't so scary. I mean,
But I wouldn't do it again.
At least for me, that's always been on the other side of the fear. It's like, we hype things up so much in our brain. But once you just take that 20, and sometimes it's even 5 seconds, to extend your hand and say hello. What's on the other side? Erin.
I just wanted to add, if we can dream it and think of it, it means that it's a possibility in this universe and this thing that we're in. So if we could think of it, if it's a concept, it's a possibility, and there's all kinds of roadblocks that could be in our way. But why would we have thought of it to begin with if it's not maybe meant for us or possible for us? That's what I've really been thinking about lately.
I totally agree with that. Don't know if I heard that, something about just along the same lines that if you dream of it, if you think of it, then it's meant for you. And what's meant for you will typically find you. Thank you.
Because you are meant for greatness. And good thoughts come from the Lord. Good things come from the Lord. And so if it is in your subconscious mind or in your heart or at the front of your mind, you're thinking it. And that is coming from greatness. That is coming from goodness. And people don't like to think that they deserve something good, but we are all children of God and we do deserve to be happy. God wants us to be happy. We want each other to be happy. Think about the joy that you feel when you see someone else happy, whether it's your spouse or your children or your friends. It is good.
Thank you. All right, friends. Does anybody have any closing thoughts?
We're all getting no fear shirts.
Oh, do you remember those?
Talk to your fear. Don't think that your fear is your enemy.
That's right.
Just acknowledge that feeling, stay grounded, and stay, I am not there, I'm safe.
Absolutely. And sometimes even taking a few deep breaths before doing that scary thing totally can normalize your nervous system and help you push through that fear. So that's the takeaway message today, friends, is again, let's learn to live with fear because it's probably not going away. Take those 20 seconds to do the brave thing, take some deep breaths, go for it, because you don't know what's on the other side and how much growth and possibilities lie on the other side of that fear. And courage can change your life. So we wish you all a very happy Sunday Sunday. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Happy Sunday Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Sunday.